Is that the right way? What would his father say? And would I succeed? After all, the boy's got eyes of his own. He can see. Burden him with the truth, declared Oleg confidently, pressing his palms down on the glass tabletop. He spoke as though he'd brought children up himself, as though he had never made a single slip. She propped up her head, cupping her temples in her hands, which were tucked under her headscarf. She looked at Oleg in alarm. He had touched a nerve. It's so difficult bringing up a son without his father, she said. A boy constantly needs something to lean on. An indication where to go, doesn't he? And where is he to get that from? I'm always doing the wrong thing, doing this or doing that when I shouldn't. Oleg was silent. It wasn't the first time he had heard this point of view, but he couldn't understand it. That's why I read old French novels, but only during night duty, by the way. I have no idea whether these Frenchmen were keeping silent about more important things, or whether the same kind of cruel life as ours was going on outside the world of their books. I have no knowledge of the world, and so I read in peace, like a drug. A blessing, she said, turning her head. It was like a nun's in that white headscarf. I know of no books closer to our life that wouldn't irritate me. Some of them take the readers for fools. Others tell no lies. Our writers take great pride in that achievement. They conduct deep research into what country Lane, a great poet, traveled along in year 1800 and something, or what lady he was referring to on page so-and-so. It may not have been an easy task, working all that out, but it was safe. Oh yes, it was safe. They chose the easy path, but they ignored those who are alive and suffering today. In her youth, she might have been called Lily. There could have been no hint, then, of the spectacle marks on the bridge of her nose. As a girl, she had made eyes, laughed, and giggled. There had been lilac and lace in her life, and the poetry of the symbolists. And no gypsy had ever foretold that she would end her life as a cleaning woman somewhere out in Asia. These literary tragedies are just laughable compared with the ones we live through. Elizaveta Anatolyevna insisted. Ida was allowed to join her loved one in the tomb and to die with him. But we aren't. We aren't even allowed to know what's happening to them. Even if I went to Camp Lake. Don't go. It won't do any good. Children write essays in school about the unhappy, tragic, doomed, and I don't know what else, life of Anna Karenina. But was Anna really unhappy? She chose passion, and she paid for her passion. That's happiness. She was a free, proud human being. But what if, during peacetime, a lot of greatcoats and peaked caps burst into the house where you were born and live and order the whole family to leave house and town in 24 hours, with only what your feeble hands can carry? Her eyes had shed all the tears that could be shed. No drop would ever flow from them now. Yet perhaps they could still flare up with a tense, dry flame, her last curse upon the world. You open your doors, call in the passers-by from the streets and ask them to buy things from you, or rather to throw you a few pennies to buy bread with. Then those sharp black marketeers arrive who knew everything except that the thunder and lightning are going to strike them down too one day. A ribbon in her hair, your daughter sits down at the piano for the last time to play Mozart, but she bursts into tears and runs away. So why should I read Anna Karenina again? Maybe it's enough, what I've experienced. Where can people read about us? Us? Only in 100 years' time? She was almost shouting now, but her years of training by fear didn't desert her. It wasn't a real shout. She didn't cry out. The only one who had heard her was Kostoglotov, and perhaps Sibgotov in his tub. There wasn't many points of reference in her story, but there were enough. Leningrad? Oleg asked her. 1935. You recognize it. What street did you live in? Furstadskaya, Elizaveta Anatolyevna replied, lingering plainly, but with a hint of pleasure over the word. What about you? Zakharyevskaya, just next door. Just next door? How old were you then? 14. Do you remember anything about it? Very little. You don't remember? It was like an earthquake. Apartment doors were flung wide open. People went in and took things and left. No one asked any questions. They deported a quarter of the city. Don't you remember? Yes, I do, but the shameful thing is, at that time, it didn't seem the most important thing in the world. They explained it to us at school, why it was necessary, why it was expedient. Like a tightly reined mare, the aging orderly shook her head up and down. Everyone talks about the siege, she said. They write poems about it. That's allowed. But they behave as if nothing ever happened before the siege. Yes, he remembered. Sibgotov had been there as usual, in his tub. Zoya was sitting there in that chair and Oleg in this one. It had been at this table, by the light of this lamp, that they had talked about the siege. What else were they supposed to talk about? The time before the siege? Kostoglotov sat there, propping his head sideways on one elbow and looking despondently at Elizaveta Anatolyevna. It's shameful, he said quietly. Why are we so calm? Why did we just wait quietly until it struck down our friends, our relatives, and ourselves? Why is human nature like that? He suddenly felt ashamed of having exaggerated his own misery and blown it up out of all proportion. What does a woman need of a man? What is her minimum need? He had behaved as though this problem was all that life hinged on, as though apart from this, his country had endured no torment, enjoyed no happiness. He was ashamed, but at the same time, more at peace. Another person's misery had rolled over him and washed his own away. A few years before that, Elizaveta Anatolyevna recalled, they deported all members of the nobility from Leningrad. There were 100,000 of them, I suppose. But did we pay much attention? What kind of wretched little ex-nobles were they? The ones who had remained. Old people and children, the helpless ones. We knew this. We looked on and did nothing. You see, we weren't the victims. You bought their pianos. We may even have bought their pianos. Yes, of course we bought them. Oleg could now see that this woman was not yet even 50. Yet anyone walking past her would have said she was an old woman. A lock of smooth old woman's hair, quite uncurlable, hung down from under her white headscarf. But then you were deported. What was it for? What was the charge? Why bother to think up a charge? Socially harmful or socially dangerous element? SDE, they called it. Special decrees, just marked by letters of the alphabet. So it was quite easy. No trial necessary. Yeah, this is actually something that I talk about in Cannibal Island, which I also read aloud way a little further back. Socially dangerous elements, socially harmful elements, they pretty much laid forth a set of rules to create a sweeping class of people that they were able to just arrest. And when they ran out of like good reasons like, people that robbed people or people that committed crimes, like actual crimes. They built a term called like socially dangerous element, which could have been anybody who just had ideas different than those that would behoove communism and socialism. But anyway, you can Google that. Might be a good idea. Or go back and check out Cannibal Island. I'll link that here. And what about your husband? Who was he? Nobody. He played the flute in the Philharmonic. He liked to talk when he'd have a few drinks. Oleg remembered his late mother, just as prematurely aged, just as meticulous and ladylike, just as helpless without her husband. If they'd lived in the same town, he might have been able to help this woman, to put her son on the right track. But they were like insects pinned inside separate compartments, each in its own set place. One family we knew, she went on. Poor soul. She had been silenced for so long, and now it had broken through. She was ready to talk. We knew one family with grown-up children, a son and a daughter, both keen Komsomol members. Suddenly, the whole family was put down for deportation. The children rushed to the Komsomol district office. "Protect us," they said. "Certainly we'll protect you. We'll protect you," they were told. "Just write on this piece of paper. As from today's date, I ask not to be considered the son or daughter of such and such parents. I renounce them as socially harmful elements, and I promise in future to have nothing whatever to do with them, and to maintain no communication with them." Oleg slumped forward. His bony shoulders stuck out, and he hung his head. "Many people signed letters like that," he said. "Yes, but this brother and sister said, 'We'll think about it.'" They went home, threw their Komsomol cards in the stove, and started to pack their things for exile. Sibgatov stirred. He grasped the bed and began to raise himself out of his tub. The orderly hurried over to take the tub and carry it out. Oleg got up too. Before going back to bed, he walked down the inevitable staircase. In the lower corridor, he passed the door of the room where Dyomka was lying. The second occupant had been a post-operative case who had died on Monday. They had moved him out and put Schlubin in after his operation. The door was usually shut tight, but at the moment it was slightly ajar. It was dark inside. In the darkness he could hear a heavy, gasping noise. There was no nurse in sight. Either they were with other patients or they were asleep. Oleg opened the door a bit more and edged his way in. Dyomka was asleep. Schlubin was the one gasping and groaning. Oleg went right into the room. Now the door was open. There was a little light coming in from the corridor. "Alexei Filipovich," he said. The gasping stopped. "Alexei Filipovich, do you feel bad?" "What?" The word came out in another gasp. "Do you feel bad? Do you want your medicine? Shall I turn the light on? Who is it?" Terrified, the man breathed out and coughed. Then the groaning began again, because coughing was too painful. "It's Kostoglotov. Oleg." He was now right by the bed, bending over it. He was beginning to distinguish Schlubin's great head lying on the pillow. "What can I get you? Shall I call a nurse?" "No thing," Schlubin breathed the word out. He didn't cough or groan again. Oleg could distinguish more and more detail. He could even make out the little curls of hair on the pillow. "Not all of me shall die." "There's an asterisk next to this," Schlubin whispered. "Not all of me shall die." So the asterisk says a quotation from a Pushkin poem. That is not incredibly helpful. I do know Pushkin was a famous poet. Unfortunately, I'm not well read in Pushkin, so I don't quite understand the reference, but I do get that it is a reference. If we read all of his poetry, then we can get it. He must be delirious. Kostoglotov groped for the man's hot hand lying on the blanket. He pressed it lightly. "Alexei Filipovich," he said. "You're going to live. Hang on, Alexei Filipovich." "There's a fragment, isn't there?" "Just a tiny fragment," he kept whispering. It was then it struck Oleg that Schlubin was not delirious, that he'd recognized him and was reminding him of their last conversation before the operation. He had said, "Sometimes I feel quite distinctly that what is inside me is not all of me. There's something else, sublime, quite indestructible, some tiny fragment of the universal spirit. Do you feel that?" And that's where chapter 34 ends. Whoa. I'm pretty sure that the last conversation he had with Schlubin was when they were walking and talking about, like, you know, just stuff. And I guess Schlubin just echoed some of the same sentiment that he had. I don't know. That's really poetic that he ended it like that. Wow. We're on like the final two chapters. The next chapter's 35. It's called The First Day of Creation. I've got a lot to say about these chapters, the way that they're written, the stuff that they call back to and such. Maybe we should do like a live hangout, talk about this book after it's done or something. That could be cool. Let me know what you think in the comments. Definitely subscribe if you want me to keep doing this. I really appreciate you guys who are listening to this book. This is like a project I started in 2020, and obviously I ran out of chapters that I had filmed, which is why I now look 5 years older, because I am. But I did say that I would finish this book, so I'm now doing it in 2025. And it's a little tough, but maybe I'll make a thing of it. Let me know, share it, and thanks so much again for tuning in. This is the Carter Banks Hour, and I will see you next time for chapter 35, The First Day of Creation. Cheers.